Welcome to today's Explainer. Okay, we're jumping right into a massive, totally universal mystery today. I'm talking about something literally every single human being experiences, but almost nobody actually understands. The vanishing act of time. You know that feeling, right? Why does it feel like the past just slips right through our fingers? Today, we're going to decode the psychology behind how we perceive time, and we'll look at exactly why our days, months, and even years just seem to vanish into thin air.
So I want you to think back to when you were a kid for a second. Remember the start of summer vacation? Those first few days felt like an absolute eternity of endless possibilities. But then, seemingly out of nowhere, you're waking up and boom, it's suddenly the very last day of summer. Have you ever felt that relatable shock? Or maybe, you've noticed that now as an adult, entire years seem to pass way, way faster than they used to. You blink and suddenly it's New Year's Eve all over again. Well, why exactly does our brain do this to us? Let's start with Section 1, the usual suspects, our conventional theories.
Right, so for a long time, psychology really just relied on a few standard frameworks to explain this vanishing act. First up is what's known as the routine hypothesis. Think about your average work week. If every single day is highly repetitive, you wake up, commute, work, go home, sleep, rinse and repeat, you're actually generating very few distinct new memories. Because the days all just kind of blend together into one giant blob, your brain doesn't have unique milestones to anchor your timeline. So when you look back, that lack of novelty simply compresses all those memories into a blur. The time literally feels empty, and because of that, it feels incredibly short.
And that brings us to the second conventional theory, which is the lack of growth hypothesis. This one is rooted in self-determination theory. That's the idea that humans have this innate, built-in psychological need to feel competent and autonomous. So when we're in a period of our lives where we just don't feel like we're actively growing or improving, we subconsciously devalue that time. We tell ourselves things like, well, I didn't achieve anything, so I just totally wasted those months. Because we strip that period of its value, our psychological perception physically shrinks it down in our minds, making it feel frustratingly brief and empty.
Moving on to Section 2, the flip side, when time actually drags. Because time perception goes both ways, right? It really does. To truly understand how our internal clock warps, we need to look at the exact opposite scenario. Those moments when time actually seems to slow down to an absolute crawl. Just look at the conditions here. When people are experiencing depression, apathy, or profound isolation, they frequently report that time moves impossibly painfully slow. And the exact same goes for periods of continuous physical pain or severe fatigue. During these intense, negative states, a remarkably short period of suffering can literally feel like an eternity. Our internal clock just stretches those minutes out into hours.
Which brings us to Section 3, the plot twist, the Kansas University study.
Now this brings us to a really fascinating crossroads, because think about it. If painful or exhausting times stretch our perception of time, does that mean that when time flies, it's strictly because our lives are empty and boring? Well, get ready to completely shift your perspective. Dr. Mark J. Landau and his research team at Kansas University recently published a truly pivotal new study. They started exploring entirely new mechanisms behind autobiographical time perception. They didn't just ask people if they were bored, they actually designed experiments to measure how deeply participants valued their past experiences and how that emotional connection correlated with their internal clocks.
And here is the sharp contrast that pretty much changes everything we thought we knew. On one side, the conventional assumption paints a pretty bleak picture, honestly. It says time flies because our lives are empty, routine, or failing to grow. It suggests a total lack of substance. But on the flip side, the new Kansas University study turns this entirely on its head. They discovered that time flying isn't about an empty life at all. Actually, scratch that. It's the exact opposite. They found that incredibly powerful, positive emotions, specifically satisfaction and nostalgia, are actually the hidden factors actively shaping our perception of time.
Let's break this down in Section 4, old versus new, a direct comparison.
So let's synthesize this whole thing by walking through this matrix together. Looking at the first two rows, the traditional routine and lack of growth hypotheses both essentially blame a void. They blame a lack of memories or a lack of perceived value, which results in time feeling empty or compressed, right? But then look at the third row. The latest research from Kansas University completely flips the narrative by crediting an abundance, not a void. It suggests that when time flies, your perception is actually being actively and emotionally shaped by an abundance of positive emotion and a deep, profound nostalgia for a life well lived. It's a real game changer.
And finally, Section 5, the true identity of a blink of an eye. So here's the absolute crucial takeaway from all of this. The speed of our past isn't just a symptom of a dull, repetitive life. Not at all. It is a highly complex, totally fascinating mix of our memories and our emotional fulfillment. Remember that summer vacation from when you were a kid that we talked about earlier? Well, it felt like it flew by at the end, not because you did nothing, but precisely because it was packed with satisfying moments that you were already starting to become nostalgic for. When you look back and think, wow, that went by in an absolute flash, it might actually just be your brain's way of signaling that those days were filled with a quiet, fulfilling satisfaction.
Which leaves us with this final, somewhat provocative thought to ponder today. As you go about your week and you inevitably feel that familiar sensation of the hours just slipping away, I really want you to ask yourself this. When your time flies by, is it really because you're stuck in some empty routine? Or are you in fact experiencing something so meaningful right now that your future self is already feeling nostalgic for it? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer today. Keep asking questions, keep challenging your perceptions, and I will see you in the next one.